It's time for your daily LSU baseball update with Musso at the box. Now, Matt Musso.
Off and running. Welcome in another edition of Musso at the box. Fired up to have you all along for the ride. LSU, they win the Baton Rouge Regional, advance to Supers, where they will take on West Virginia. That gets underway Saturday. You're looking at a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, if necessary. Game times 1 p.m. Central Saturday, 5 p.m. Central Sunday, and of course the TBA for the if necessary game. But before we get to West Virginia, and we will spend plenty of time the rest of this week, I went back through the regional after all of our immediate reactions, and I compiled a bunch of numbers, a bunch of situations, a bunch of takeaways that I have just from the weekend as a whole that I think matter immensely heading forward in the NCAA tournament for LSU. And I kind of want to go through all of it here on today's show. So this will be our final takeaway from the Baton Rouge Regional, kind of just smorgasbord here on today's Musso at the box. We will put it to bed after this. But I mean, when you really sit back and you really look at those 4 games, those 4 days for LSU, it paints a very unique and really interesting picture just with how it all played out. But you don't really have to look that far, or that hard, I should say, to find some really, really encouraging signs for LSU as they continue this postseason run here in 2025. So we're going to go through it all. Smash the like button, please, if you have not already. Get subscribed if you have not already on your favorite podcast app, as well as on the YouTube channel. Please share. Follow me on social media as well, Twitter X at Musso Matthew. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram as well. And let's just kind of go ahead and dive right into it. Now, as I said, I've gone through and compiled a lot of numbers with this. I've tried to condense them as best I can so they come across as clearly as I can present them. So stick with me on that. I know some of it will be kind of get lost in the shuffle and the cracks. It's fine. There's not going to be a test after this. It's just baseball is a game of numbers, and it's really how you can present things, the best. But there's also plenty of commentary that I have to kind of go along with those numbers. When I sit back now after the dust is settled and I look back on the 2025 edition of the Baton Rouge Regional, it was one that we will remember for a very, very long time, not just because of the special moments and the special performances, but really it was one that I can't ever recall seeing a regional that played out this way ever. Whether that's LSU or just watching from afar at one, across the landscape of college baseball. This was a tale of 2 halves in this regional. Because if you go back and you look at the first 2 games, LSU could not have been any more dominant. Whether it was offensively or on the mound. And yes, Cade Anderson and Anthony Ianson have a lot to do with that. They were phenomenal once again. I mean, they combined to throw 2 shutouts. But the outings you got from guys out of the bullpen, whether that be Primo, Rizzi, or Schmidt, were also pretty good. At the play, LSU looked like the clear-cut national championship favorite after the first 2 days of regional play. Offensively, you scored 19 runs on 21 hits in the first 2 games. You hit .304 with 2 outs and drove in 9 runs with 2 outs. So 9 of your 19 runs in the first 2 games came with 2 outs. You hit 3 home runs. You struck out in just 21% of your at-bats the first 2 games. You were awesome. It was all hallmarks of everything that we had seen from LSU's offense when they were going great. The 2-out production, the low strikeout total, scoring in multiple different ways with power, with also manufacturing. It was great. And then on the mound, you threw 2 shutouts, back-to-back shutouts in a regional for the first time since 2015 for LSU. You gave up 9 hits. Dallas Baptist and Little Rock in those first 2 games hit a combined 136 with runners on base. You walked just 6, you struck out 24, and you committed 0 errors. You were flawless in those first 2 games. And then for 11 innings, you completely lost it. You could not have looked any different, any much more in contrast than the team we saw in the first 2 games. You started at the championship final against Little Rock. You put up the 3 spot in the first. And from the second inning, starting in the second inning, for the next 11, you looked like a shell. So that 11-inning stretch would be the second inning on Sunday through the 3rd inning on Monday. Offensively in that stretch, you scored 2 runs. You hit 200 with runners on base. The one thing that was encouraging, though, is you only punched out 4 times. While your offense was just being you couldn't get anything across, you only punched out 4 times. And what that tells you is LSU's they were putting the ball in play. The timely hitting just wasn't there. And we all know that. But that illustrates it better than anything else that I could. It just wasn't falling in for you. On the mound, after allowing 0 runs in 18 innings, you allowed 15 runs in that 11-inning stretch, 14 free passes, 13 of those were walks. And you committed your first error of the regional as well. And then it flipped again with Ethan Fry's double in the 4th inning on Monday night. The timely hit finally fell in. It finally fell in, and you end up scoring in 5 of the final 6 innings, including the final 4 innings of the game on Monday night. You outscore Little Rock 9-1 in the final 6 innings of that game and really asserted your will behind dominant pitching from Casan Evans and clutch timely hitting mainly from Ethan Fry and Luis Hernandez. So what flipped? Like, how does that happen? You were loose again. When Fry laces the ball into the double, everyone can breathe easy. Because, again, go back to what we talked about in the 11-inning stretch. You were putting bat to ball. It just wasn't falling. But you tense up because you know what's on the line. You press. You try to do too much. Fry lacing that ball into the gap, you breathe easier. Okay, we can do this again. And you did. And the timely hitting is the biggest point of that. Because LSU, in that 11-inning stretch, how many hits did they have? 4 with runners on base. In the entirety of the 9-inning game Monday night, LSU had 4 hits, again, with runners on base. You might say, well, Moose, that's not very good. The caveat is they were timely. 3 out of those 4 hits drove in runs. 6 runs to be exact. 6 of your 10 runs came off of 3 of your 4 hits with runners on base. The timely hitting returned. And Casan Evans was awesome, and we'll have more on him later. But it's unlike anything we've ever seen where you could look so dominant, so unstoppable that you're going to cruise and you have the 4 seed, and then you can't throw strikes. The timely hit eludes you. But once you finally get somebody on the mound, and Evans it's dominant, and a hit falls in, everyone just relaxes, and you get back to playing the type of offense for the final 6 innings of this regional that you played for the first 18. And you end up running away. And when you look back at this in totality, it looks like a pretty damn dominant weekend offensively for LSU. And it was. And we'll get into a little bit of the reasons why. But I really just wanted to start there with trying to illustrate just, man, how wacky and roller coaster this weekend really was. Now, a few things, like takeaways now. Let's start offensive, and then we'll get to the pitching. One of our big conversations heading into this regional was LSU coming off of their SEC tournament performance at the plate. They just weren't very good. They scored 4 runs over the course of 2 days. You beat A&M 4-3. You got shut out 2-0. It's the first time you've been shut out in more than 2 years. You had 2 hits against Ole Miss. And everyone had asked, we did our Q&A, and a lot of people had asked, man, is it going to be better offensively for LSU because they're going to step out of conference again? And my retort to that, my answer to that was no. It's going to be better for LSU offensively because they're playing at home. Conference or out of conference, it hasn't mattered at home. LSU had averaged 9 runs per game going into the regional at the box. Your last 2 conference foes you played at home, you run ruled each of them. It's about being at home. And overall, when you look at it, LSU ends up scoring 33 runs on 43 hits over 4 games at home. That's an average of 8 runs per game. So you were off of your season average by 1 run, and you mashed 7 home runs out of the park as well. And this is what I loved about LSU's offensive performance, and this is my takeaway here. You really saw the length and the depth of LSU's lineup on full display. You had 4 guys that I want to highlight that carried you in the regional. And a lot of you probably think I'm going to start with Ethan Fry. And I'm not. We're going to get to Ethan Fry because he was awesome. But Luis Hernandez hit .533 over the course of this weekend for LSU in the Baton Rouge Regional, which is by far the best of anyone in the lineup. He mashed 2 homers. He drove in 5. But the thing that really, really sticks out that I want to hone in with Hernandez's effort, he struck out just twice. In 15 at-bats, he struck out just twice. And that's huge because if you remember going back, I'm trying to find the notes that I had on this. Oh, man, I can't. Wait. Here it is. If you remember, this was late April. So this was after LSU had entered the second half of SEC play. And Luis Hernandez going into the second half of SEC play was hitting .340. That was heading into the Auburn weekend. He was hitting .340 in conference play. And then he just fell on this incredible slump where he went 0 for 12 with 7 strikeouts. This was entering, let me find out which weekend that this was entering. Look at the schedule real quick because the note I have in my phone is the 21st of April is when I wrote this down. So this was entering the Tennessee series. Hernandez was 0 for his last 12 with 7 strikeouts. You saw them start to get Aaron Beatty back in there, give him a little bit more rest. And now to see him turn in that type of outing that he did in the regional, only 2 punch outs in 15 at-bats and hitting .533, that's huge. That's the type of performance where we looked at him halfway through conference play and said, that kid is a complete X factor for you. And he was again this weekend. So I wanted to highlight him. Now you can get to Ethan Fry. Fry had 6 hits. 375, drove in 6, which led LSU's team. He walked more than he struck out. Love that. Stephen Milm, postseason Milm. And I've already started digging into his career in the postseason. We're going to do a show on that later in the week. Milm hit 416. He drove in 3. He scored 5 times. He walked 6 times. He struck out 0. That's loud. Stephen Milm doesn't strike out much to begin with. Milm has struck out 22 times on the season. That is by far the best number on the LSU team. But 0 strikeouts. That's huge. That just tells you the quality of at bat that he was taking, especially when you pair that with the 6 walks. That shows you the 416 average is great. The 6 walks and 0 strikeouts show you just how locked in Stephen Milm is at the plate. And then the last one, excuse me. The last one, no surprise, is Derek Curriell at the top of your order. He hit 400. He walked 6 times. He only punched out 2, scored 4. He was awesome. Those 4 guys really carried you. That in of itself shows you the depth of the lineup because Curriell's at the top along with Fry, who could sometimes be in the middle, but Milum's in the middle and Hernandez is at the bottom. The other thing that I loved is while those 4 guys were carrying you and Jared Jones was slumping, you had somebody each night step up and pick up the slack. Whether it was Danny Dickinson in game 1 with the 2 homers and the 3 RBI, whether it was Chris Stanfield at the bottom of the order against DBU with a 3 out of 4 night, 3 RBI, and his first homer of the year. Hell, even in game 4, the last one. You know, man, you look up and Jake Brown is there at 2 for 4, and then Jared Jones breaks back out at 2 for 5. I skipped the Sunday game. My bad. And that one, the standout there was really Larson off the bench with the pinch hit single that he had. But you saw somebody do something in each game. And we talk so much about LSU going as Jared Jones goes. And there is some truth to that. But what has been encouraging at times this season, but especially this weekend, when Jared Jones struggled, LSU's offense didn't. Outside of that 11-inning stretch. Because you had others carry the load, and then Dickinson steps up and has a big night. Then Stanfield steps up and has a big night. That's depth. That is 1 through 9. That is length in your lineup. And that is encouraging. When you hope LSU takes that on the road if they make it through the Super Regional to Omaha, like that's the sign I would give you that I would tell you, yeah, they can score up there in TD Ameritrade. They can score away from the box. Now, you have to see it because, again, all of that took place at Alec Box Stadium, and I'm fully aware of that. And you have to see it come to fruition, but that is definitely an encouraging sign for LSU going forward. That when one of your best hitters and one of your veterans and Jared Jones struggled, you had others pick up the wagon and carry the load. And that's just that's an advantage that I believe this team has that few others in the country do, is the depth of offense that they can bring into the lineup on any given night. And I don't think it was on display in any better fashion than it was this weekend at the box. Now, the pitching. Takeaways from the pitching side. Anderson, Ianson, they're awesome. Casan Evans, phenomenal. And I'm going to come back to Casan Evans here momentarily. but I want to start with some things that are going to have to improve. Because as discouraging as the 2 runs were in that 11-inning stretch, the 15 that you allowed and the 14 free passes are of greater concern to me. But should they be? What makes them a little concerning is who they came from. And that was Newt, Shores, Myers, and Cowan. Let's start with Shores. To show you the contrast, I went through and dug up some strike percentages. Chase Shores in his last 6 outings entering the regional. So that goes back to the Texas A&M series for him, where he really saw him for the first time go, wait a minute, that looks a little different from him. So in his last 6 entering the regional, Chase Shores had thrown 64% strikes in those outings. In the regional, he threw 56% strikes. Jacob Myers, in his last 7 heading into the regional. That takes him back to the Auburn series, because that was really one of the first times where you looked at it and you went, hold on now, might have something there. It's starting to click. In those previous 7 outings heading into the regional, 62% strikes for Myers. In the regional, that's 2 outings, by the way, in the regional, 47% strikes. And then there's Jaden Newton. And I saved Newt for last for a reason. Newt's previous 5 outings heading into the regional. It started at the Southeastern games where I started it, because if you'll remember, that was the best he has ever looked in an LSU uniform. It just is. The velocity was back to where it was when he was coming out of high school, up to 97. And it's okay, man, now if he can hold that, you have something. And in those 5 outings leading into the regional, 61% strikes. Jaden Newton in the regional, 64% strikes. We remember the walks starting that inning, the free passes starting that inning, the second on Sunday. But Jaden Newton got hit. I mean, that really was his problem. He was in the zone. He just got rocked. He gave up 3 hits and 2 earned in an inning and a third. Yes, the free passes started that, but he got back into the zone. He just got hit around. I saved him for last there because this is the question you have to ask yourself. Are you confident that Shore's performance and Myers' performance is a one-off now? And what you saw in their 6 and 7 outings leading into the regional is actually the corner that they have turned. And this was a one-off for a guy like Shores pitching for the first time in an NCAA tournament and in a big leverage spot. And a guy like Myers who has NCAA tournament experience, but just kind of reverting back to his old self. That's a question that you have to answer what you believe. Now for them, they have to go get back in the lab and prove what I think to be correct. And for me, I think it is just a one-off. Now it's up for them to go prove that, because you need Shores, you need Myers going forward. And for those 2 guys, it simply just was not enough strikes. It's as simple as that. They did not throw enough strikes, and it got them into a whole mess of trouble. But if it's a one-off, you still feel pretty good about them going forward. And I do still feel pretty good about them going forward. But they have to go prove it. And then there's Zac Cowan. And we touched on this a little bit in the immediate reaction after the game. But I am concerned there now. I am. Because of strikes. It's not enough. Cowan, in his previous 4 outings, heading into that regional, That starts at Texas A&M. It starts with the 2 outings at A&M. Cowan has thrown 59% strikes. In the regional, he threw 54% strikes. Zac Cowan is a strike thrower. You have to get more strikes from him. The command just has not been there. Zac Cowan came into the night on Monday with 10 walks on the season. 10 walks on the season. He walked 2 and hit another guy Monday night, but he had walked 3 in his previous 2 outings there. So of his 12 walks, 5 of them have come in the last 3 outings. On top of that, in that same little 5-game stretch that we're talking about now, including that Little Rock performance, Zac Cowan has given up 11 of the 16 earned runs that he's allowed. So why is it happening? Okay, again, it starts with strikes. We know who Cowan is. His best pitch is the changeup. First and foremost, the changeup is not as crisp as it has been, at least in my eyes, in my opinion. I say that for a couple reasons. One, he's not getting as many swing and misses on the pitch. He's not getting as many called for a strike. Like, he's missing with that pitch. And if that's going to happen, there's nothing to get them off his fastball, which on a good day tops out at 92. The other part of that is he's getting into predictable counts, not just with the heater, but also with the changeup, and you're seeing guys take much better swings. I had somebody ask in the post-game Monday night if Zac Cowan's tipping pitches. To be honest, I haven't noticed a tell. I'm not a coach or in the dugout really studying that, or a player in the game. Maybe he is. But for me, I just look at him and I go, it's not as crisp. The command isn't as sharp. And that's something he's got to improve. Cowan was awesome against Arkansas. That's the one game in that 5-game stretch where he threw shutout ball. But he still had 2 walks that outing. He was just able to pitch around it a little bit more. But you need Zac Cowan to get back on track. And yeah, I'm concerned because now, again, it's a 5-game sample. Excuse me, it's a 6-game sample now. No, 5-game sample where 11 of his 16 earned runs have come, where 5 of his 12 walks on the season have come, and that's equal to the number of strikeouts. He's walked 5 and struck out 5, and that's just not who Zac Cowan is. So first and foremost, command of the changeup. That's what's going to have to happen. Him throwing it for a strike. Because that will induce more swings and misses. That will be able to keep them off balance, and it will also keep them off of his fastball. Might his role change a little bit? Sure. Maybe you go to him for an inning instead of asking him to extend now. Maybe you use him more in a middle relief situation where, you know what, the game's on the line potentially, and this is not necessarily the save spot, but it's where the game is to be saved, right? And you need him to, get you an inning there or a couple outs. Maybe that's what you do. Because in the small sample, he's still been pretty good. It's just the more guys are seeing him now, that's where the trouble's really coming. You're going to keep running him out there because you need him and he's been one of your best, and you should. But something's got to change there. And for me, it all starts with the command of the changeup. So what do you do with Casan Evans? I wanted to save that portion of the conversation to right now after we had the Cowan, Newt, Shores, and Myers conversation. What does Casan Evans' role look like? I want to be perfectly clear when I talk about this part of it. I said all week that I wanted to see Casan Evans get a start in the regional if the situation dictated itself. It dictated itself twice. They went a different direction each time. I've laid out the reasons I wanted to see him get the start. He is a stuffed guy. Outside of Anderson and Ianson, in my opinion, he's the only guy on the team that has shown he can mix 3 or more pitches, 4 strikes consistently throughout the season. And that's rare. And I wanted to see him get the start. And the key part of that is if the opportunity presented itself. And that's still how I feel. When I say I want to see Casan Evans get a start, it is if the situation of the weekend has dictated it. The same conversation we had after he went out there and dominated Tennessee in his first start of his career and came back here the next Monday and said, you're leaving him in the bullpen. You're operating this on a TBA metric with him. If you need him to close out a game, you use him to close out a game. Because while, yes, he's one of the only other guys who can mix 3 to 4 pitches consistently for strikes, that's also what makes him arguably one of your best pitchers out of the bullpen. And the guy to shut down the opposition. Like, look, here's the thing. If you look at this weekend against West Virginia and you win behind some combination of Cade Anderson and Shores, Rizzy, Williams, something like that, Newt, like you win behind some combination of that. And then you go Ianson in game 2 and you have an opportunity to slam the door and punch your ticket to Omaha, you absolutely 100% throw Casan Evans in that spot and slam the door and go to Omaha. If you end up in a winner-take-all scenario on a Monday and you have not pitched Casan Evans, that's who I want to get the ball to start. And you might say, well, but then you don't, then you burn him and you have to close out the game at the back end. That's where you look at what hasn't thrown, whether that's Myers, Shores, Newt, Cowan, and you piece it together. Those guys have proven that they can step up plenty this year. As comfortable as Casan Evans has looked at the back end of your bullpen or just in your bullpen, Chase Shores has looked that way as well leading into this regional. So for the better part of a month, Shores has looked that way as well. And if you're going to go to Omaha and make any kind of noise, you need more than just Casan Evans being this ace in the hole out of the bullpen for you. Yes, he can impact multiple games, all of that. In this situation I'm looking at in the regional, I don't expect him to impact multiple games because of the workload he just carried for you on Monday night. So let me be crystal clear. You operate this weekend against West Virginia the same way you did really down the stretch of the season. If Casan Evans is available to spot start, you spot start him. If you need to use him to slam the door in a game prior to that, you do that first and foremost. And I think ultimately that's how this weekend does play out, is you have that opportunity probably in game number 2 and they take it and you punch your ticket. But that's where I stand on the Evans deal. I want him to be your designated spot starter, emphasis on spot starter for the rest of the postseason. If you need him before then, use him because he's one of your best. But if he's available to spot start, that's who I want on the mound. Because for me, he's proven that he can be comfortable in both roles. And he pitched you into the 5th inning. Of that A&M series or close to it. Maybe he pitched you into the 4th, but he only gave up 1 run. Like, it's a guy that's proved he can go through the lineup a couple different times in starting and out of the bullpen. He's a real ace in the hole for you. And it's up to them to match up and pick whichever way. And you know what? LSU has lost one game all season when when leading after 7 innings. They're 33-1. And Evans and Cowan have been a big part of that. But so have Shores, so is Myers, so is Rizzy, so is Newt, so have all of those guys. They can do it again. The last thing I wanted to touch on is Cooper Williams. And maybe I should have actually led the pitching conversation with this. You'll remember, if you've been a frequent listener of the show, that a few weeks back, in fact, it was after the South Carolina series. It was that show's recap. It was the South Carolina series. And we had looked at Cooper Williams and his last, it was his last 5 outings, starting with the Tennessee series through South Carolina. And in that, he hadn't given up an earned run. The walks were way, way down for Williams. In fact, he had walked just 1 in that stretch and punched out 5. And I told y'all there, I loved what I was seeing from him heading into the postseason, and I couldn't wait to see more. And I thought he could be a real factor for you on this team going forward. And I'll be damned if he wasn't. When you needed it most, too. He helped save your staff a little bit when nothing else was going right, when you needed to try and stop the bleeding and claw back into the game. He gave you that opportunity Sunday night. Career long 3 2/3, shutout. He walked just 1 and punched out 4. He did it against righties and against lefties. What you really saw in that 5-game stretch prior to the regional, where I was like, man, I love what I'm seeing. It was real matchup lefty. The one that really stands out is him coming in and getting Jay Slavia let out in a big spot in that A&M series. But what you saw him do in the regional was really build on that to the next level. And that's another thing. Man, could you potentially go like Evans Williams in a game if you need to spot start-wise? But that's just another weapon. Y'all, now his last 6 outings, he has given up 1 earned run. He has walked 2, and he has struck out 9. Take notice. Cooper Williams is going to pitch some valuable innings for LSU now as they make their run. And it was just confirmation from what we had thought was coming from him, given his last 5 outings of the regular season. And boy, did he put that on full display in the regional. He was awesome. He was absolutely awesome and kept you in that game and gave you a chance to win it and come back. And unfortunately, you just couldn't get the timely hits. But that is something that might get lost in the shuffle of everything now with what Evans did, with what Fry did, with Ianson and Anderson, all of that. I wanted to make sure we mentioned it one more time. He was incredible for you on Sunday night, and it just continues a trend that we've seen from him down the stretch in the regular season. Cooper Williams, remember the name. All right, y'all, that's going to wrap it up. Y'all go ahead and smash the like button. Please get subscribed if you have not already on the YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast app. Follow on social media. All of that is greatly appreciated. And be here next time for more on Musso at the Box.